you're obviously very passionate about what's going on at PodShow, and how do you end up working together? I mean, what's a typical dynamic between the entrepreneur and the investor, and as a board member? How does that relationship work on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis?
Well, I think it's my job. First of all, I get confused with whether I'm a venture guy or an operating guy. I mean, I don't think whatever a venture capitalist does, I guess I do it, but that's not how I think about the company. Okay, so I think most of my partners think the same way. We think about building companies as opposed to investing in companies. So right from the beginning, we're thinking about how do we advantage this company into a big market, okay, and make sure that it just obliterates its competition. And so how do we build the right team? How do we advantage it by giving really, really good people? How do we make the right connections? So how do we, call the right people, give them influence? Have you heard of what? Well, you probably don't know what PodShow is doing, but let me explain it to you. It might be an interesting partnership for you to open doors for them. But basically, everything is around providing advantage to PodShow to win this market, and this market being a combination of social and media. So sharing what you like with who you want to share it with. And so if you have a profile on PodShow and you want to share it with your friend, or the friend wants to know what is it you're interested in these days, what do you actually watch and listen to, you can share it with them like you're a network in and of yourself. You are the network, and I can see it by digging you, you dig me, and you can basically share now, not just simply text exchange or pictures or go this. I saw this interesting video. Go download it. Go look at it. You're sharing your life with people you want to share it with, and that becomes a social network for music, video, and podcasts.
What type of conflicts of interest have you seen as VC and founder, and what's put the most strain on your relationship?
What type of conflicts of interest?
I can't think of any that because we would never invest in a competitor of PodShow. We don't invest in any competitors of a company we've already invested in, so that there would be no business conflicts.
Where you typically run into conflicts is if you take money from someone who would invest in a competitor, and if it takes them a long time to decide they're not going to invest in a competitor, then I would suggest you think about that, what that means to you. Ray and his team and his company and his group, they stand for something, so you know what they stand for. The second time is in valuation, and discussions about valuation. But if you describe your company well enough and defend your vision well enough, and you're also fair enough to the other side, then that doesn't conflict. If you raise ongoing rounds, that's where you also can run into conflict. I just think if you set it up at the beginning right, if you do a little homework about what's going to happen in the future, you sort of anticipate the dialogue, and you talk with your investor, what's going to happen if this happens? What do you think about this? Also, if you're honest with yourself, if you're hitting the wall somewhere and what you thought would happen is not happening as well, you want to have an investor who's a partner. And I think we've gone through a bunch of those intersections together, and I think that we just got a pretty good feel for each other and trying to have some integrity.
Yeah. So generally, there are no conflicts of interest. I'll give you one small thing that could occur all the time from the venture business. If you're an early stage venture investor, you're taking the most risk. I mean, so you're investing when you're still technical risk in the company. And so typically you're looking for a lot of ownership for a reasonable amount of investment. If you're fortunate enough, a lot of companies basically get modest, say they're Series B, get a modest uptick in valuation because they're coming maybe out of technical risk. They got one customer to try it at beta or something like that. But in this case, PodShow, their Series B had a huge uptick in valuation. And so I've got to look at my job. Now I've got a bit of a conflict because on one side I've got to support the company. And so he wants to be able to go out to other investors and say, Kleiner Perkins is behind me, and Kleiner Perkins is investing, and they still believe in the company. And even though the valuation is relatively high, they believe so much that they're going to make money that they're going to invest at this high valuation. When in fact, my venture side says we already own a lot of the company, and it's smart of us to not take our pro rata, because even though it will make money, we might make less than the 10 or 15x that we're looking for on the early money. And so I've got to balance those two things, and they're a bit of a conflict. But we did invest.